Hello everyone, good morning. For teleSUR, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. To begin, in an unprecedented vote, Colombia's constitutional court has granted gay people adoption rights. Now, the court ruled that no human being can be denied their right to adopt a child on the basis of their sexual orientation. The ruling comes after the Constitutional Court approved same-sex marriage in July, even though the Colombian Congress had not finished debating a bill to permit it.
So, to impede a child from having a family based only on sexual orientation or the gender of a person or of a couple represents an unacceptable restriction on the rights of the child and, furthermore, contrary to the superior interest of the minor.
And another court ruling, this time in Mexico, has approved the recreational use of marijuana there. The Supreme Court there ruled in favor of a civil organization that demanded to be allowed to grow the crop for recreational use. Now, the case was first brought in 2013. The court set a precedent by voting 4-1 that prohibiting people from consuming the drug was unconstitutional. Clayton Kahn now with with the reactions now in Mexico.
The historic Supreme Court ruling to decriminalize for one specific civil organization the recreational cultivation and consumption of marijuana is being considered a watershed moment for pro-legalization groups that say prohibition has taken a bloody toll in Mexico.
I believe that after 150 dead, more than 26,000 disappeared, and more than 250,000 displaced, we are more than ready. We need to end this corruption, and the clandestine market strengthens corruption.
Yet, these same groups applauding the decision warn that strong private and state interests will seek to make full legalization difficult. They point to a multi-billion-dollar industry that they argue benefits from keeping more than 14,500 people behind bars due to the prohibition laws.
There is a strong control of this prohibition because it benefits certain people. On the one hand, it benefits criminal groups, but on the other, security and justice institutions.
Meanwhile, there are opponents to the Supreme Court ruling and its implications. For some, the recreational use of marijuana presents a danger to society and health. They argue that strong family values are key in maintaining social peace.
There wouldn't be so much violence if people were more integrated with their families.
Yet pro-legalization activists point to the systemic violence that prohibition provokes. They say opponents are misguided by social stigmas and that there are at least 5.7 million users of cannabis that consume responsibly.
There are many stigmas around the people who use these substances, and there is a notion that all the cases are negative or will result in problems. When that is the truth, out of the segment of society that consumes cannabis, the problematic cases represent a very small percentage.
Mexico continues to maintain some of the most conservative drug prohibition policies in the Americas, while a growing choir of the region's leaders are calling for change. Supporters of legalization point to the growing trend in the world that 30 countries, including the United States, are now regulating the recreational, scientific, medicinal, and industrial use of cannabis. Clayton Kahn, teleSUR, Mexico City.
The electoral authorities in Haiti now say they will announce the results from last weekend's general elections later on Thursday. The government has laid on extra security as several parties demand a thorough investigation into 162 alleged irregularities. On Wednesday, the current Haitian Prime Minister Evans Paul backed the Electoral Council and insisted that its results would reflect the will of the people. Peru's largest trade union confederation, the CGTP, is joining a strike by public sector workers in defense of labor rights. Unions in several departments and ministries are already taking action against next year's budget and a new civil service law, which they say reduces their benefits. The workers are expected to march to Congress to present their demands. Bolivia's parliament is continuing its debate on a draft law to change the constitution to remove presidential term limits. Now, there have been heated exchanges on the specifics of the referendum, which is due to be held next year. President Evo Morales' supporters want him to run again for office in 2019. Our correspondent Dimitri O'Donnell now reports from La Paz.
Yes and no, together in Parliament, each side keen to mark their territory, stating their positions. A vote is underway to approve the draft law, which would allow for a referendum to abolish presidential term limits to take place next year. But first, they had to weed out the specifics of the law. The opposition say the motivation of the government is clear.
The only item of the agenda of the government, the official party agenda, is to look for endless power and seek re-election. They want to put everything else to one side to achieve endless power. This is very dangerous.
Both sides are debating whether the draft law will be amended ahead of the referendum. The opposition are angry that those seeking to campaign for the referendum no longer have to register. In the past, groups had to sign up with the Supreme Electoral Tribunal. But the government supporters say the people of Bolivia are in favour of the changes.
This is democratic. The people will decide the re-election of our president. They are also aware that there is a need to continue this process of change.
The constitutional change would allow presidents to run for 3 consecutive 5-year terms. Currently, presidents can serve 2 consecutive terms. Evo Morales' supporters argue that he will be able to run for president again because his first term in office didn't count as a presidential period because it took place under the previous constitution. The date of the referendum has already been set for February 21st next year. If it passes, it will clear the way for President Morales to run for office again in 2019, something that would please the country's largest social movements that have been campaigning for this to happen. Dimitri O'Donnell, teleSUR at the Presidential Palace in La Paz.
Despite the resignation of Prime Minister Victor Ponta, protests in the streets of Bucharest, Romania continue. Protesters are demanding profound change in the government, which they regard as highly corrupt. Activists believe that Ponta's resignation is not enough to prevent similar incidents to a recent nightclub fire from happening again. The British Parliament has introduced a new bill which will give more surveillance powers to the government. The Investigatory Powers Bill allows intelligence agencies to access massive amounts of internet data and bulk information on users. It further requires internet service providers to store a detailed history of users' usage of the web every year. The whistleblower Edward Snowden tweeted that the bill, which many are calling the Snoopers Charter, legitimizes mass surveillance and is the most intrusive and least accountable such regime in any Western country. Up to 10,000 students in Britain took to the streets to protest against the rising cost of higher education. Clashes with the police led to the arrest of 12 people. The protest coincided with an ongoing strike of rail workers that is causing chaos on London's public transport system. And the legendary missing guitar of John Lennon is now up for auction. The guitar was used by the rock star during 1962 and 1963 when most of his recordings required an acoustic guitar. Shortly thereafter, the instrument went missing. Now it is expected to be sold for $1 million, making it the most expensive guitar auction in history. That's what we're covering on this Thursday morning here from Caracas. Plenty more on all of those stories and others at our website. Check it out, telesurtv.net/English. For teleSUR English, I'm Cody Weddle. We'll see you back here in just a few hours.